What's up, everybody? Welcome into ESPN FC Live here on YouTube. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, noon Eastern, 5 o'clock GMT. We've got a great show coming up. We've got Rob Dawson, Ryan O'Hanlon, preview some big games in the Premier League. Newcastle United, one of those. Man City, Spurs, another. We've got a great LaLiga preview, a couple great matches there. We've got Stuart Robson and Rob Palmer are on the ground in Barcelona. We just learned also Robbo, no surprise, as a butler, and who knows what else is going on in that hotel room. We'll figure that out when we get those guys in a few minutes, and we'll wrap things up with the Bundesliga. Guys, great to be on with you. Before we jump into our conversation, we just got the press conferences from Pep Guardiola on the eve of the Man City Spurs games. Let's hear what Pep had to say before we jump into our conversation.
Asking if he's going to change because play against us? Absolutely not. This is not going to happen. We'll be surprised, but I remember I met just once in I don't know, 3 or 4 pre-seasons ago when we were in Japan. We played against Yokohama, a team of the group, and then was there the manager, and I saw some clips before, some games before we started pre-season. It was the first or second pre-season game. And I said, wow, there are things that I like it. And I said to the players, so the more I have to be, I know we are not ready because we are in pre-season, they were in competition, but the more we're going to face a good team with challenges, intense build-up, how intense is the high pressing, how use the keeper to make the process, and it was that true. So in a period of short time, even the games that didn't win lately, I'm impressed how good many things they do, and how many chances they create, and how aggressive in all departments. So he came here and nothing, in a few months, you recognize perfectly his team.
There's Pep talking about Ange's style, to say the least, and his approach to football. We saw it start really well for Spurs. They were unbeaten in their first 10 matches. They've lost 3 straight now. Injuries are a problem. And Rob, I'll start with you. And Pep basically said he'd be surprised if the approach is any different. Do you think the same thing? We're going to see the same high line, the same way Tottenham has played. Will they play that way on the road at the Etihad?
I think so. And, I think Pep Guardiola is absolutely right. I think it was really telling that in that Chelsea game that Spurs had when they went down to 9 men, that I think Postecoglou said after the game that even if they'd had 6 men, that he would have told his team to still go for it. And if he's talking about having 6 men on the field and still playing with a high line and still trying to attack a team, it's fair to say that he's going to go to the Etihad Stadium with 11 men and try and do exactly the same. He's so married to that philosophy that even if he wanted to now, I don't think that he could change. And I would expect him to play exactly the same way against City on Sunday. That the thing about that is that I've watched an awful lot of City games over the years, and teams come with a very, very low block. They try to go man-to-man sometimes. Some teams try to attack. There's no formula for success at the Etihad Stadium against Man City. So it's not to say that, if Spurs went and changed things, that they could possibly go and they would have a better chance of beating City, because you can go there against City with any kind of style and still get beaten. And I think Postecoglou would probably tell you that it's better to go there and lose trying to attack and win the game than it is to sit back, defend, try and soak up as much pressure as you can, because you may still lose anyway. So you may as well go there and try to win. And I expect that Postecoglou will tell his players that ahead of the game on Sunday and do exactly that.
Go ahead, Ryan. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think against Chelsea, it was maybe a little misguided to play the way they did after they went down a man. But yeah, I don't really know what the other option is on Sunday. They could play a super defensive style, and then you have Ben Davies and Emerson as your center backs kind of bunkered in the box, constantly fending off Erling Haaland. I think I'd rather probably try to be a little more proactive and push forward. And, I think Spurs started off the season so well that it suddenly created all these expectations. Are they in the title race? Are they in the top 4? When in reality, coming into the season, I think everyone kind of was agreed that it was sort of a rebuilding year. And I think if you're rebuilding and you're trying to institute a certain style of play, you go into this game, you're probably going to lose this game. This is the hardest game on the schedule for any team in the league, right? So trying to institute your style, maybe you get blown out. I think that probably has a kind of a long-term benefit that trying to grind out a deep bunkering counter style that probably isn't going to work anyway wouldn't have.
I like that you guys both mentioned the Chelsea match. I'm not going to lie. When it was 9 men, I'm like, they don't have to do this right now. I was literally saying it out loud. Like, this is wild just to watch. They weren't going to change. And it was just, this is how we're going to be. And it was quite fascinating. Rob, from the City perspective here, they are massive favorites. They are odds on minus 360. So for those who don't know, you got to bet $360 to win 100 That's how heavy favorites City are to win this game at home. They're currently in second in the table. Will this end up being? Will they cruise to a win? Are the bookies right? This is that lopsided of a matchup.
I think so, given the circumstances. Ryan's mentioned there about Spurs' injury list. I think they're missing around 11 players. It would be very, very interesting to see Postecoglou have his fully fit side and see what he would possibly do at the Etihad Stadium. Obviously, that's not going to be the case, and the defence in particular is going to be particularly patched up. I mean, City haven't lost in any competition at the Etihad Stadium for more than a year. I think it was before the World Cup in Qatar that they lost to Brentford. Obviously, they drew with Liverpool last time out. That's the only game they failed to win this calendar year at the Etihad Stadium. That tells you how strong they are at home. City, again, they've gone through a little bit of a blip. They are conceding goals. They don't keep that many clean sheets, but they are scoring a lot of goals again. Since they lost to Arsenal, I think they've scored around 25 goals in 8 games in all competitions, which is an awful lot of goals. And particularly when you're playing against a Spurs team who are missing a lot of defenders, aren't defending particularly well themselves, there's a fair chance that City are going to score more than once. And when you get into that kind of shootout with City, it's very, very difficult to win because of the attacking options that City have. It's not only Haaland, it's Alvarez and Doku and Grealish and Bernardo Silva, all these fantastic players who can all hurt you. Even if one of these guys is having an off day, there are about 3 or 4 others who can hurt you and score goals and create chances. So the bookmakers have made those odds for very good reason. City are heavy favourites because they're a better side, they're in better shape, and they're a better team.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that. Let's go to a game that's a little more compelling and interesting on both sides of things. Newcastle and United both coming off a rather interesting midweek Champions League draw for Newcastle. A lot of drama around that late penalty. United drew at Galatasaray in rather shocking fashion, up 2 goals at 2 different times during the match. Andre Onana was guilty of a couple huge missteps, but here's United manager Erik ten Hag backing his keeper.
If you analyze it well, then you see he's the second best goalkeeper in the Premier League, based on stats. So his expected preventing goals is the second best in the Premier League. So yeah, he's doing well, but yeah, also and he knows that in Champions League he makes some mistakes, but all over, if you see first 5 months, he's doing particularly well. You have seen how he is reacting on the bad performance, like he did after Munich. He was in Burnley, he was outstanding. So he's a strong character, he's a personality, and he will deal with it.
All right, Onana's form in Champions League, shaky would be nice. I mean, basically punched the ball into the goal the other day to see one of those free kicks, and the other ones he just cheated and got caught. Ryan, I'll start with you here. United has won 5 of 6 in the Premier League, despite their form in other competitions. Is that assessment of where Onana is and the fact that that's his guy? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, as the resident stat nerd, I appreciate him using stats to make an argument. I just think he's doing it in the wrong way. Essentially, he's looking at expected goals you can control for where every shot ended up on the goal frame and estimate where how often it would be saved versus how much would be scored. And you can kind of add it up and kind of see how many goals above average a keeper is saved. And Onana is tied for second with Alisson in that total. That doesn't make him the second best keeper in the league, though, because that, in order to make saves, you have to have your opponents taking shots. And I think he's facing a lot of shots because Man U, the defense isn't great. But I think with Onana, he's been terrible in the Champions League. That's a fact. Last year in Serie A, he was terrible, and he was amazing in the Champions League. And I think that there's a weird thing with Onana where I actually think, like, on the aggregate, if you look at stats, he will look pretty good on the whole, but he feels so wildly inconsistent where, let's say he's saving 2 goals worth of shots in a game, and then the next game he's giving up, a goal and a half worth of shots. And I think that might look good on an aggregate, but you just really don't want that from your keeper. I think you'd much rather have, someone like, say, Alisson, who's, 25% better than average every game, on and on and on, instead of Onana, who might win you a game, but then will also lose you a game. I think you don't want the keeper being your match decider every game, which it kind of seems like Onana currently is.
Yeah, you want consistency and solidity in that position, to say the least. Rob, when you look at the matchup And we'll look at where United is playing in terms of, are you buying where they're at? Essentially 5 of 6 they've won in the Premier League. They're in 6th. They are a point ahead of Newcastle. This game is at St. James's Park. How do you feel about where United is form-wise, given the fact there were some decent positives to take away from Galatasaray, although being a draw? Where do you see this team right now?
I mean, that is a great question because I don't know the answer to that. They are wildly inconsistent. They have won 5 out of the last 6 in the Premier League. Obviously, the numbers are great, but they haven't played well in a lot of those games. And even the Everton game, they win 3-0. It's obviously a tough place to go. But there's a huge period of that first half where they look really, really vulnerable and shaky. And really, Sean Dyche, the Everton manager, was at a loss to explain how his team went in at half-time, having not scored at least once, because they had about 5 chances in 5 minutes before that half-time break. Obviously, United in the second half go on to win relatively comfortably. But you saw on Wednesday night against Galatasaray that even when United were in positions where they're the stronger team on the field, that they still look vulnerable. And they went 2-0 up against Galatasaray and 3-1 up and still haven't managed to win that game. It finishes 3-3. And that tells you probably exactly where they are, that they have these moments, these flashes of attacking brilliance where they look quite good. But then there's also periods of games where they come under heavy pressure defensively and they don't cope. They don't cope well in small periods of time either. That just in the Champions League, that they've conceded an awful lot of goals in very, very short spells. Against Galatasaray, I think it was 2 in 9 minutes in the second half. A couple of other times they've conceded twice in 5 minutes or twice in 10 minutes. And that tells you that, mentality-wise, that when things start to go wrong in games, that it unravels very, very quickly. And the problem is when you're facing a team like Newcastle at St. James's Park, where the atmosphere is incredible, the Newcastle fans get right on top of the game and right on top of the pitch. You have to be able to deal with that. And there's a reason why Newcastle have the 3rd best home record in the Premier League. Arsenal have lost there, PSG have lost there heavily, Chelsea lost there heavily, even though Newcastle have got a lot of injuries, that things can start to unravel very quickly in atmospheres like that. And that would be a massive worry for Man United heading into that game, because there isn't an awful lot of evidence to suggest that when things start to get tough, they can deal with it. If they get out in front early on, they're okay. But they're going to face huge periods of pressure against Newcastle, and it's whether they can deal with that. And the evidence suggests that more often than not that they can't.
One of the biggest questions remains, talking about the defensive solidity and leaking goals. Rafa Varane is, still on the sidelines. The guy has won everything for club and country that you could win. Ryan, when you look at the choices that Ten Hag has made on his back line, why is Varane not playing?
It's a good question. It's interesting in relation to Harry Maguire, right? Who kind of publicly had the captaincy taken away from him, was being shopped around this summer. It seemed like the club might have been leaking that to try to pressure him to leave. And now he's back kind of like a first choice player. And it just like, to me, it just kind of raises some weird man management questions for the manager. And I think we've seen that with a number of players this season where I don't really understand what's happening. I think, Varane, that perhaps we're seeing with Casemiro as well. When you sign an older player, they can suddenly drop off, right? Even if you're signing them off of an extended period of significant success. But yeah, it's not like the defense has been very good. I think Ten Hag almost implied it himself. If Onana is the 2nd best keeper in the league, it means that your defense isn't playing well and your keeper is having to make a ton of saves. So yeah, it's just kind of a larger part of a larger, just very questionable management and lineup decision making that I think we've seen from Ten Hag this whole season.
All right, let's get some predictions real quick. The bookies do have Newcastle odds-on favorite -110 to win this one. That's not a huge favorite, but they are the favorite. Rob, you said how tough it is to play there. Do you like you like Newcastle in this game?
Yeah, I do. I think though that because Newcastle are favourites, there might be value in backing United. This week hasn't gone as bad as many people predicted. They beat Everton. They didn't lose in Istanbul. I would fancy them to score against Newcastle because of Newcastle's injury problems. I think that it may end up in a draw 2-2.
Okay, Ryan, what do you got?
Let's go 3-1 Newcastle.
Okay, 3-1 Newcastle, the injured Magpies with a W at home. Guys, thanks a lot for the Premier League preview. Appreciate it. Enjoy the games this weekend. All right, we're going to moving on to La Liga preview. We bring in the guys calling the Barcelona match against Atleti coming up here. Rob Palmer, Stuart Robson joining us. Robbo, did you kick the butler out? Are you good? What's going on?
Now the butler's gone. He's done his job, and he's made way, so I can get on with the show. You have to get rid of them sometime.
I mean, Rob and I don't know. The big time players, you guys get different type of accommodations. It sounds like Rob and I are grinding with the peasants. Let's start with Girona though. They've been really the surprise of, you could argue, throughout Europe. I mean, the fact that they're in second in La Liga right now, their performance, they're taking on Valencia at home this weekend. Rob, when you look at this start, do you think they're capable of maintaining this and maybe finding themselves in a Champions League spot when we look at May?
Truthfully, probably not a lot of people over here are liking them to Leicester City when they had that great run in the English Premier League a few years ago when people were daring to dream and nobody thought they could keep it going. Truth is, the only major team that they've played so far is Real Madrid, and that's the only game they've lost. They've got the big games coming up: Atletico, Barcelona, Real Betis, and then this weekend the game that we're showing you is the Valencia game. So they're the big teams, the big clubs. If they can maintain it against those, then yes, they deserve to maybe have a top 3 position. But it's an adventure, it's a dream at the moment. Last year, they finished in the top 10. It's a small town of 98,000 people. So they're exceeding all expectations. They're playing good football. It's a wonderful story. Leading scorers in La Liga as well. But can they keep it up? Probably no. Can they get into Europe? Yeah, they might be a surprise package because they play great, enterprising football. They've got this incredible link up with Manchester City as well. And they're benefiting from the advantages of being part of the City group. So that maybe takes a little bit away the romance. But I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful story. And it's not happening in any of the European League at the moment.
Yeah, my bad. You guys are calling this match, not the Barca Atleti match. Robbo, what has been so? Rob mentioned the buccaneering style, if you will, of Girona. When you play against some of these bigger clubs, though, are they going to be able to maintain their style? Kind of the similar conversation we had about Ange just a few minutes ago with Tottenham. Is this going to be how they play, period?
Yeah. If you've got a style of play, and that's what Sanchez has brought to Girona, that they play a certain style of football. He's got decent players who can play that style of football. You've got to keep it going. It doesn't matter who you're playing against. If you start to change it, that's when you're having problems. And that's why they've been good this season. The manager knows exactly what he wants from the team. The players know exactly what's expected of them. They've got some decent players. I wouldn't say they've got great players, but they've got decent players who carry out their roles really well. And when you have that belief and you keep doing the same things week in, week out, you start to get on a roll. And that's what's happened with Girona. They might struggle against the likes of Real Madrid, as they already did. And they might struggle against Atleti. They might struggle against Barcelona, but they'll certainly give them games at the moment. So they're a good side who deserve to be where they are. And I'm sure they're going to carry it on right through the season.
Rob, I'll follow up with that. I mean, they are pretty heavy favorites, minus 145 to take all 3 points against Valencia. What do you make of the matchup that you guys are going to call?
Against Valencia, they've got home advantage and they've been excellent at home this season. It's not a classic Valencia team at the moment. They have turned things around, Valencia. They've lost only one of the last 6 matches. But truthfully, Girona, top of the table, scoring goals, full of confidence, very few injuries at the moment. So if I was a betting man, and believe me, I'm not, I would be tipping Girona to win this game this weekend.
I like where your head's at. Okay, Robbo, where are you here?
Absolutely. I feel the same as Rob. As you said, they've got a good game style. Valencia are okay, but I think I've done them the last couple of weeks where they can be called out defensively. I think Girona will win by a couple of goals, 2-0 maybe.
Okay, let's move on to Barcelona Atleti. And interesting, João Felix comes back to play one of his former clubs now. But let's hear from the striker.
You seem happier here in Barcelona. You seem like 3 goals in Champions League. You have put very fine games in the La Liga as well. What has made the difference personally for you?
I don't know. Here is the club that since I was young, I always want to play. I always watch them on the TV during the last 10, 15 years. So yeah, it's like a dream come true, and when you had the dream and you finally achieve, I think you become more happy, So yeah, I think it was because of that.
Portugal was a team that played perhaps middle closer to your own goal. Atletico was that kind of team. Here you play closer to the opponent's goal. How do you feel personally to that? What's the style that you like the most?
For sure, this one. Me and every player. If you ask the players from Atletico too, they will prefer to play more time on the attack, for sure. If they don't assure that, they are lying. But of course, every player wants to attack. wants to have the ball and to score goals.
So Joao Felix is happy, but Stuart, let's start with you. The team has some serious injury issues now. Gavi and Pedri both out of that midfield. They are sitting behind Atleti right now. What's Barcelona's kind of short-term and long-term prognosis, if you will, when you look at the team and all that Xavi's dealing with, Stuart?
Well, they've got, obviously, as you said, some injury problems. But having watched them play over the last few matches, they just lack that continuity, that fluidity that they once had. They're starting games too slowly. They're not got the understanding in certain areas. They're not playing off. They're playing off the cuff, but they're not playing with instinct at the moment. And so everything takes a little bit longer to find that pass. They're not quite making the right pass for the right runs. We're not seeing the best of Lewandowski. I'm not sure we're seeing the best of Joao Felix, although he's happy with what he's been doing. If you're a player of his quality or supposed quality, you've got to affect the game. If you're a creative player playing in that role on the left-hand side and coming in to join the front player, you've got to be better than he's been. And I could say that about several of the attacking players who play in behind Lewandowski and several of the midfield players. I think it's good that they've got De Jong back into the side to try and control the game. And he will do that. He'll switch the play. He picks out good passes. But overall, I've been disappointed with Barcelona, both as with their team individually and as a team, and their lack of fluidity and their lack of understanding of where the next pass might be. Something that you always expected Barcelona to do so easily and so quickly.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Rob, when you look at Barcelona, what do you see?
I'm not seeing a Barcelona that plays in the traditional tippy-tappy style that Xavi played in when he was a great player at the club. He's been getting a bit of stick over here in Spain for the way Barcelona are playing, as Stuart said there. I think it's 6 times this season they've conceded the first goal. In most of the matches, they've come back and they've turned the game around, and they're only 3rd, 4th place, so joint with Atletico in 3rd place at the moment. So they're very much in the running. They are playing with a handicap that they can't go out there and they can't buy players. They can't splash the cash like they used to. They've had a whole glut of injury problems, and those are the excuses, and the fans have been on their back and they're playing up the mountain. They're not playing at the new camp these days. So they've got a lot going against them. So it's not particularly a vintage Barcelona team, but they have done brilliantly with the players that they've got there as well. It's not so pleasing on the eye. It's interesting listening to Joao Felix there. It was a very honest interview that he was giving, and I think he's quite enjoying playing. He's only scored the 1 La Liga goal, but he's playing against his former club this weekend. Griezmann will be in opposition for Atletico Madrid, so that understandably over here is what the Spanish press are honing in on. Joao Felix against Griezmann, which one will get the revenge against their former club?
Yeah, Rob, let's talk Atleti, because they just qualified out of their group in the Champions League. They're 1 point ahead of Barca in the standings here right now. When you look at Griezmann in particular, he's been outstanding. What do you make of Atleti? Stuart.
Well, Atleti, I think, have been good in the games that I've seen. They can change their style. They're still fairly good defensively, although I've seen them be counter-attacked quite easily at times. We saw them in the 2 games ago where they realised that they had plenty of width out wide, so they got cross after cross after cross in the box where Morata was trying to get on the end of it. He missed some big chances. Other games where the opposition tried to stop the crosses coming in, there's been more room through the middle. That's when Griezmann starts to find those little bits of space, those little spaces, and he can then find the next pass to Morata. The midfield, Koke, playing as the holding midfield player, is looking to dictate the game again, as he did 2 or 3 years ago and did for so long, where his last season he didn't play quite so well. Barrios is a good addition in midfield. He can pick out a pass as well. Llorente, when he's playing as a right wing back or on the right-hand side, he'll make forward runs. So Atleti look a good side at the moment. It's whether the manager still allows them to play the expensive game in the big matches. And that's what I think at times he needs to do. He's got to get the balance right. And if he gets the balance right, and I know Rob believes this, that they've got every chance of really challenging for the title this year.
Okay, let's get into that. They're 4 points off. They're 4 points off of Real Madrid. Rob, why do you think they're going to be able to contend for a title here again?
They've got a game in hand as well. They had a game against Seville called off because of the bad weather over here. So many would expect them to win that. So then you take that to 1 point. I think they're the most mature team in La Liga at the moment. They're not really carrying any kids, as Stuart said. Barrios has come through. Wonderful little play called Riquelme has just made his Spanish debut as well. He cried. He couldn't believe that he got the man of the match award the other night in the Champions League game. They're doing brilliantly in Europe. They're out of Europe last year at this stage. No team has scored more goals than them in the Champions League. And as you look to the bench, he's got either ors in virtually every position in the team. He's been missing his 3 central defenders at large parts of this season, but you've not noticed that because defenders defensively, they've been sound. And if you look at their bench, he's got the likes of Azpilicueta and Soyuncu, who he signed from the Premier League. So they've recruited well. They don't have any players that you could say are past their sell-by date. They're still in their prime. They don't have any players that they carry in like Barcelona that are coming through that have got the better days ahead. So I always look at the ages of the players, and they've got the players in their peak years, in their prime years, and they've got, the most experienced manager, and nobody likes to play against Atletico Madrid.
And ESPN Bet app does have plus 750 right now for the future for Atleti to win it all. Right now, Madrid is a massive favorite at minus 200. Some little value there, Rob. I know you're not a betting man, as you said, but that's good stuff.
It would be my tip if I was a betting man. I think Atletico, that they've got it to go the distance this season. They're the long distance runners.
Okay, well, we'll stay with you, Rob, real quick, and we'll finish with Stuart. In this game, though, Barcelona is even money, and as you mentioned, this is not at Camp Nou. This is up in Montjuic, up on the mountain there. They're even money to win. Atleti is plus 250. Serious value on the team from the Spanish capital. What do you make of the matchup? Who do you like?
For me?
Yes.
I'm going to sit on the fence. It's a draw. I think Barcelona are playing well. They're in a good moment. And I think Atletico Madrid will not be upset if they come here and they go back to the capital with a draw. But as I say, in the long run, I think Atletico Madrid maybe have more in them than Barca and Atletico Madrid. But this weekend, I just found, from a commentator's point of view, I want a high-scoring draw with lots of red cards. But that's me being greedy.
Lots of red cards too. Cleats up and goals. Stuart, what do you like here in this match? Knowing the odds for that draw is plus 260. So where are you at here?
Well, I think Barcelona will dominate the ball, but without creating too much, because I think they've been passing it too slowly. And I talked about some of those players that are playing alongside Lewandowski, not playing at their best at the moment, not being at their most creative. And I think Atletico Madrid will drop that little bit deeper and go into a defensive mode, but they are a threat on the counter-attack. And I just think it might be Atleti's day. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory for the away team.
Like it. Fellas, great stuff. Enjoy the call. Girona Valencia will be listening on ESPN+. Thank you so much.
Have a good weekend.
And we wrap things up. A little Bundesliga preview. Dortmund and Leverkusen, huge game. Leverkusen currently first in the Bundesliga. They are 10 points clear right now of Dortmund, so a big match, to say the least, at home for Dortmund. Let's hear Leverkusen's coach, Xabi Alonso, and what he has to say before the match.
We are aware that the expectations are being created, but we don't want to be part of that creation. You know? We want to be part of what we can do, and let's see how good or how much we can deserve to earn that chance. But it's still too early. A lot of things can happen, so I'm not gonna be the one that we are gonna pressure ourselves talking about those things. So I go like, I think in little periods, in little phases, and I go like between international pauses. In this previous one we have had 7 games, and now before the winter break we have 8 games. So to be honest, that's my focus right now, how we are gonna deal with this 5 Bundesliga, 2 Europa League and 1 Pokal game. And after I will start to think about January. The challenge is not against now, it's not up against Bayern, it's against what we can do and how far we can reach and how far we can deserve to be in that position. So if we are here in this position in April, for sure, I will tell. I'm not saying no, we will see now, but still too early. So the challenge is, can we prove and to be that consistent in a longer time? We have been 3 months or 11 games. Can we be 25? After 25, we will start talking. I think that the last 8 games on the Bundesliga, we will see where we are.
All right, well, you can catch that game Sunday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Leverkusen hosting. The only points they've dropped this year is a draw to Bayern. Taking on Dortmund Sunday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern on ESPN+. Match begins at 12 o'clock. Cannot wait for 11:30, excuse me. Coverage begins at 11:20. Thanks for joining us here on ESPN FC Live on YouTube. You get us Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and you can get the daily show every night, 6 p.m. Eastern. That's it for us. See you next time.